story. Back in 2019, I have limited closet space, and my closet is in my office. And so, because my wife won't let me put my stuff in our room. So, no, my stuff is it outnumbers her stuff, and so I have to have my own place. So every year we have to kind of, and you probably do this too, you take down your flannel shirts and hoodies, and you pack them away so that you can hang up your short sleeve shirts and all that stuff. And so I was doing that back in 2019, and in the process of taking down my flannels and my hoodies, I felt sad, and because I found myself dreading summer, and I was like, man, I hate summer so bad. I just don't like it. I mean, part of the thing is we live in the South, and summer here is different from summer other places. It's a little humid, and so it can be rough, and then too, it just as a church. As a pastor, it's just kind of one of those things. Most pastors around this world, they just put their head down and just pray, God, get us through summer as quickly as possible. And so I just realized, man, I don't like summer anymore. And then I'm just sitting here getting nostalgic, and I was like, as a kid, I lived for summer. I mean, summer was the greatest thing ever. It was Christmas summer. I mean, that was the way my year went. I just could not wait. I was excited. And I was thinking about, I was like, why did I love summer so much then versus now? And part of it is, of course, school, and you're getting out of school, which is wonderful. And but I realized I assigned value to summer. So as a kid, summer had value. I had assigned value. I had assigned significance, purpose to summertime. It was the time to sleep in, wake up at 11 just in time to watch The Price is Right and eat Fruity Pebbles. It was just the perfect opportunity just to then go out into the neighborhood, get with my friends. We would ride bikes, we would play basketball, we would go through the woods, and we would cause all kinds of trouble in the neighborhood, and then we came home when the street lights came on, right? My mom didn't see me all day in the summertime until nighttime. We'd take trips, my family would take trips, we'd go camping, but summer had purpose, and I think that's the difference maker. I went to do one of my favorite things a couple weeks ago, and that is get my oil changed. And so you go do that, and so then they come out to you every 5 minutes, and they say, here's the thing that I know you don't believe was on your car, but it was. This goes in your car, and to me it's dirty. You need another one. And I'm like, okay, yeah, what is it? This is the Hassenpfeffer. This goes under the dashboard, and then you sit on it, but it's got dust, so let's get you a new one. Okay. Well, he came out, and he's like, hey, out of 10, your brakes are a 2. Your brake pads are a 2. I was like, that doesn't sound good. 2 out of 10? I feel like that's a poor star rating. I was like, that's a bad review for brakes. Let's upgrade. Yes, okay. So now my waiting for my oil change turned into waiting for brake pads. And so I'm sitting in their little kind of waiting room by myself. And it could be a frustrating experience. It could feel like a time drain. But get this, I brought a book. Game changer. Suddenly, I finished this book I've been working on for months. I finished it while I was sitting there waiting for this nonsense. All of a sudden, I'm grateful to be there. I'm like, this is a great, great day. What's the difference? Intentionality was the difference. And I'm not saying I'm smart. I just happened to grab it out of my back seat before they lifted it up on the thingamajig. So I went in there and read my book. So intentionality makes all the difference in the world. So what I'm saying is it would be good to step into summer with intentionality. And so that's why we created the 50 Days of Summer, was because we wanted to give this time intentionality. We wanted to be on purpose about it. What if we could take summertime, and it's not just something you fast forward and try to get through and something you suffer through. What if it's something that is beneficial for you and your life, and it's fun and it's exciting? And so the whole thing, I try to recapture the magic of when I was a kid. That's why the whole thing has kind of a retro theme, is because it reminds me of when summer was glorious and wonderful. And I really take this retro theme seriously. I mean, to the point where I'm wearing cool water cologne today. And I'm not kidding. I'm really all in on this thing. But anyway, not that I wouldn't anyway. But part of this leaning into the summer and intentionality is going to be the topic that we consider, the conversations that we have on Sundays that'll hopefully carry through the rest of our summer. And certainly we'll be talking about this message tomorrow night at our Sunday, Monday get-together. So this is our topic for the summer, being fruitful. So the name of the series is Fruitful, and thus the runts on your table. I'd like to begin this series with a key scripture that we're going to be using kind of throughout the whole series. And but this is our key scripture, and we'll talk about this verse in more context next week. But this is John chapter 15, verse 8, and it might be familiar to you. In this, it says this: "By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, and so prove to be my disciples." Throughout our lives, both personally and professionally, we're presented with a lot of different definitions of success. A lot of metrics of what success means, what it was supposed to mean to us. And it's how we determine our personal success, our personal value, and then also it's how we are evaluated by the people around us, the world around us. These metrics that we are just sort of presented with, and we carry these definitions with us throughout our lives. They may adjust, they may change a little bit. There might be more emphasis on one than the other at different stages of life, but we carry these definitions with us. We don't necessarily consciously obsess over them. Sometimes it's just subtle. It's subconscious. It's just kind of beneath the surface, but it tends to drive us. Our definitions of success set the trajectory of our lives. The decisions that we make are based on achieving success by our own standards and metrics. They affect our confidence. They affect how we feel about ourselves. They affect our own personal self-worth, whether or not we're meeting these or on the path to meet these. And there's certain things that in our life, sales numbers might completely affect the way you feel about you in the course of your life, your performance reviews at work. Stepping on a scale and looking at a number, that metric of success can make you feel a certain way, and it does. And so we carry that, and it determines a lot of different aspects of our life. It affects us in a lot of different ways, our definitions of success. Personally, I've been in ministry for more than half my life. My wife and I and my daughter, we moved here back to my hometown, Chattanooga, Tennessee, back in 2012, and to start a church. I was on staff at a church for a long time, and we moved here to start a church. And as a pastor of a local church, starting a church, trying my best to identify what it is, the definitions for success for me and my role, our church in general, has been one of the greatest struggles that I've experienced. It's been very difficult, and it's been difficult to try to kind of cut through the noise and what's presented to me so that I could try to find a way to define success. After all, how do you define success, or how do you really pursue success if you can't define what success is? If you don't know what success is, how do you determine whether or not you're successful? How do you aim your life towards being successful? And so you have to understand what success is. And so this is one of those topics. Determining success or defining it is a topic that, and I'm just going to go ahead and read your mind. If you walk in any room, anywhere, and you float that question, what is the success and how should I determine success? Most everyone is going to have an opinion about that. Most everyone is going to offer an opinion for that. And I've heard it a million times. And people kind of, they chirp in, they jump in, and they're like, listen, Chris, it's really, it's about short-term goals. It's about baby steps, achieving short-term goals. Those short-term goals add up. And eventually, before you know it, you're at the destination. You're at the finish line. You've arrived. And I get that. And so I don't discount goal setting at all. I do it. I think most people should. I don't discount the work that we put into achieving goals. I think we should work hard. I think we should, if we're going to do something, why not do it really, really well, or as well as we can? I think that's a good philosophy. But I do think that there's something far bigger than that. I think that there's something far deeper than that. I think that there is a metric of success that is way bigger than just what's circulated and copied and pasted in this world. Because there's a lot of people who are successful who are miserable. There's a lot of people who have met all the goals, checked all the boxes, are living their dream life, their best life, and they are still, if they were honest with you, if they weren't scared to admit it, they would tell you, I'm still just as dissatisfied and unhappy as I was when I started. Why? Well, I think this is something very important to consider. And I'm going to share a quote from Pierre de Chardin, which is fun to say, je parle français. Pierre de Chardin, he made this great quote, and I quote it all the time. We're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. We are spiritual beings. We are not created to be satisfied by the world and the circumstances around us. We're just not. We are created for more. We're way more complicated and complex in our design than just, hey, if I just get that promotion at work, everything is going to be holly jolly perfect. The Apostle Paul, he wrote a really beautiful letter. It's one of my favorite books of the Bible, the book of Galatians. He wrote a letter to churches in Galatia, Christian believers in the region of Galatia. And a big purpose of the letter, a major intention of the letter, was he was writing to people who were having a hard time defining success for themselves. They had one foot on the boat and one foot on the dock as it relates to success, spiritual Christian success for their lives. And so the whole letter is really Paul pleading with them to please, you can't mix these theologies, you can't mix these covenants and these belief systems. It's either all Jesus or it's all you. You're trying to do a little bit of Jesus, a little bit of me, this kind of spiritual cocktail to make us comfortable. And so this is, he actually says the same thing that we just read, the quote that we just read. He says it differently in Galatians chapter 2, one of my favorite verses in the Bible. Galatians chapter 2, verse 20. He says this, I have been crucified with Christ, and it is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. In the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself up for me. So to individuals, to a community, to churches that are having a hard time defining success for themselves, he says this: it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. He says it this way, Paul says it this way: we live in the flesh, but we don't live by the flesh. We live by faith. In other words, our human experiences on planet Earth are fueled and motivated by something spiritual, something far bigger and more significant than just our human experiences. So we're having human experiences. We're living in the flesh. Paul acknowledges that. We all are living life in the flesh, but we're not living according to or by or fueled by or based on the priority of what is flesh, what is carnal, what is temporal, what is the earth, the world around us. This is not our home. This is not the final destination. And this is not what gives our lives significance and purpose. There's something deeper. And he says you access that, you experience that by faith. So I don't want to make this conversation about me, but I'm using my situation as an example. And so for me, personally, being in ministry, full-time ministry, among other things, but primarily God called me to ministry, and I begrudgingly answer that call, and I begrudgingly answer that call daily. The only metrics that I've ever really been presented with, growing up in church, being on staff at a church, and just being in the world of ministry and being part of conversations that a lot of you have never been privy to, being behind the curtain, as they say, seeing how the sausage is made, being a part of those conversations that are the ones that maybe you thought happened, but you're just theorizing. I was there, and I can tell you they do happen. Where the only real metric that I've ever been presented with, and the only real conversation that it comes down with, apart from the fluff from the stage, hey, God's doing something great. And then we sit down in a meeting and we talk about what that means. And that means it's numeric. It's all numeric. And it's the only priority I've ever been presented with. And people will make it sound more spiritual than it is, and they'll put like lots of nice holy terms around it, but at the end of the day, it's just numbers. And that's really all we care about is numeric. So what happens is, subtly, if all this is about is increasing numbers, then suddenly the way that we do this is completely built around increasing numbers. The Apostle Paul made a statement that I preach the gospel. If I wanted to be liked, if I wanted to be favored, I'd preach a different message. He intentionally preached what wasn't a crowd-pleasing message because it was the only message. I read this quote the beginning of this year. It was a great book I was reading by a pastor named Jared Wilson, who's written some great books as well. I believe he's in Nashville. And he wrote this, and it really made me pause in terms of my experience in church. He said this: we must take care that our employed methods of growth don't unwittingly undercut our desired ends. In other words, what if the ways that we try to attract people to Jesus actually frustrate their ability to treasure him or even to see him? I've never heard it put in those terms. And that statement helped me start to understand why a lot of my contemporaries, people that I grew up in church with, that I experienced church with, that I did church with, that were all in as much as I am, are now further from the faith than you could ever imagine. I'll put it this way: further from the church than you could ever imagine. I think a lot of people in this room have at some point in their life thrown in the towel on church. In fact, I'd say that's one of the common denominators of our church. It's a lot of folks that just said, I'm done with this. It's somewhere along the ways because we're like, this actually, all you're doing is trying to build a crowd. Here we are now, entertain us. You're just trying to, it's a Christian entertainment gathering circus. And you leave week after week after week. You're like, yeah, I mean, this is a cool place, and it's flashy, and it's awesome, and everyone likes to come and experience all the goodies. But at the end of the day, it's like, what's happening on the inside of me? Is my soul experiencing the goodness and the grace of God? It's something happening, something expanding within me. So this conversation, I know, sounds quite specific to my role and as a pastor, but the point is far deeper than that. It is way deeper, and it applies to every single one of us. No matter what you do or where you are in your journey, it doesn't matter. All this is speaking directly to us. And here's a thought. Not everything that counts can be counted. Not everything that counts can be counted. In fact, I would say the most important things that do count cannot be counted. They don't fit in a box. You can't assign a number to what actually, truly, deeply, eternally matters. True, meaningful, fulfilling, lasting success is far deeper and far more significant than what's copied and pasted from this world. So what is true success? What does it mean to be successful? Thankfully, we're giving a biblical metric of success for a believer. Yes, no, he's over there. That's how rumors get started. Sorry. It's summertime. We're given a true biblical metric of success. Fruitfulness. To be fruitful. To be fruitful believers. What does the Bible say is successful? Well, let's go back to our key verse. John 15, verse 8. By this, my Father is glorified, so we glorify God, that you bear much fruit, and you also prove to be my disciples. We show ourselves as followers of Jesus Christ, and we glorify God himself by bearing fruit, being fruitful. That is the true Christian biblical metric of success. My life is, if my life is centered around me glorifying me, now to glorify, it means to lift up, to exalt. If my life is all about exalting me, self-exaltation, which you don't have to look far, look hard to see that kind of, that priority in this world. You're going to see it. People walking around in normal places just with the phone and just in the cereal aisle at Walmart, just like doing a whole TikTok. It's like they're all, the brand that they're marketing is themselves. It's all about self. If my life is about exalting myself, then all my focus and all my attention should be on self-promotion, self-elevation. Me. But if my life is meant to be about glorifying God, if I am truly crucified with Christ, and it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me, then I live to glorify God, not myself. And what glorifies God? What is the thing that glorifies God? What glorifies who he is? What glorifies the fact that he has saved me? What glorifies the reality that he sent his son to die in my place? Being fruitful. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 31 says this: whatever, whether you eat or drink, whatever you do. That's a very broad statement. Eat, drink, whatever. Do all of that for the glory of God. In other words, in whatever it is that we do, absolutely every aspect and dimension of our life, we are here to glorify God. Wherever we are, whatever we're doing, whoever we're with, we are here to bear fruit in the process of that in order to glorify God. That's the metric of success. Now, there are many seasons that I've experienced in my life that by all metrics of traditional metrics of success, by all definitions of success, by anyone else's opinion, any onlooker, any person looking in on my life, they would say, Chris, you are failing colorfully. There has been seasons of my life where absolutely nothing was going right. Internally, externally, relationally, circumstantially, financially, the wheels were falling off. I was failing miserably. But in retrospect, I look back on those times and those seasons where I was not succeeding. And it's during those seasons that happen to be some of the most pivotal, important, amazing moments in my entire life where Jesus himself was doing surgery on me, doing something different in my heart, in my life, changing, transforming me. It was some of the most impactful moments of my entire life that have affected all the other moments of my life. But by all definitions, they were not successful. But if you go to a different place, if you look at this from a different angle, if you consider I'm not living by the flesh, I'm living by faith, there's a spiritual motivation, there's a spiritual source and significance that is far bigger than just what I can see. So I look back on those times and I can't count it loss because I gained through it. In Philippians chapter 3, the Apostle Paul calls all things that he gained in his religious pursuits, all the things that he accumulated through his religious pursuits that everyone else would deem success, he counted that as loss. He said, this is working against me. We'll read that verse in just a minute. The last are the first, the least are the greatest. He offers strength through weakness, life through death, beauty from ashes. A lot of times, being fruitful comes at the expense of being successful. Being fruitful comes at the expense of being successful. Over the next 7 weeks, we're going to talk in detail about what it means to be fruitful. We're going to talk about why being fruitful is so important. We're going to talk about how we actually lean into allowing God to create more fruit in and through us, to bear more fruit through us. But today, I want to close with this verse. This is Philippians 3. I just mentioned it. The Apostle Paul is describing a dramatic personal shift, a paradigm shift that he is experiencing where he is moving from one definition of success to another personally and how it's affecting him. And I want to read this. This is in the Message translation. It puts it in beautiful terms. So this is how the Apostle Paul describes his new definition of success in light of Christ. So this is Philippians chapter 3. We're just going to read verses 5 through 9. This is what it says. We can list what many think are impressive credentials. You know my pedigree: a legitimate birth, circumcised on the 8th day, an Israelite from the elite tribe of Benjamin, a strict and devout adherent to God's law, a fiery defender of the purity of my religion, even to the point of persecuting the church, a meticulous observer of everything set down in God's law book. The very credentials that these people are waving around as something special, I'm tearing up and I'm throwing it out with the trash, along with everything else I used to take credit for. And why? Because Christ. Yes, all the things I once thought were so important are gone from my life compared to the high privilege of knowing Christ Jesus as my master firsthand. Everything I once thought I had going for me is insignificant dog dung. I don't know that he could use more colorful language than that. I've dumped it all in the trash so that I could embrace Christ and be embraced by him. This is as countercultural as you can get. This is a complete and total rejection and rebellion to the way the world does business. He is standing up, he is drawing a line in the sand and saying, all the things that this world defines or tries to put on me to define me as being successful or not, I reject. And the reason he is rejecting them is because he's discovered that they are poor substitutes for what really gives his life meaning. Having experienced what really truly gives his life meaning, nothing else, everything else compares to it like dog dung compares to a summer breeze. He's had a paradigm shift. And with that, and this is what I'm discovering, a lot of people think, well, that's theoretical, and that's a religious posture, and those are spiritual things. They don't have a lot of legs and foundation in my everyday life. Well, what if? What if it actually determines everything in our everyday life? What if going into any situation, realizing that you're walking into it from a place of approval rather than going into a situation searching for approval, how does that affect you in that situation? What if you step on the scale and look at it and you see a number, and no matter what that number says, you know that you are loved, beloved, and God's got a purpose for you? What if every time you look in the mirror, you don't get frustrated because you're follically challenged for the glory of God? I count it all loss. Can I get a what? So anyway, he's like, yeah. So what if we look in the mirror and instead of criticizing and critiquing and like, oh man, I'm getting older. Good, you're getting wiser. And God's going to do beautiful things, better things, bigger things than he's ever done with you. What if you go into the boss's office because he is going to talk down about your performance, and in your heart you know what, I'm placing my priority where it belongs. This job can come and go, and God's got me, and God's doing bigger, more eternal things in and through my life than you could ever imagine. You don't have to say that to them, but you just smile and say, I'll do my best, I promise. But at the end of the day, you walk away with confidence because you know that God is doing something bigger and brighter and more significant than just meeting quotas. It changes our everyday lives when we feel the pressure shift off of our shoulders onto his. This is not your performance. This is Christ's performance imputed to you. You are reflections, representations of Jesus Christ. All that we do is just letting Jesus be Jesus. It is no longer I who live. It's Christ who lives in me. Now, I might still get in the way sometimes, but I just have to remind myself, I'm crucified with Christ. It's no longer I. So in these verses that we just read, the Apostle Paul is telling us in so many words, there is going to be people waving around a lot of credentials. They're going to be shoving those credentials in your face, posting them, reminding you of them. This is what matters. This is what makes your life happy. This is what success is. But you can't change Paul's mind at this point because he's ruined. He's been ruined. Once you've had a steak that is like cooked perfectly, seasoned perfectly. It's very difficult to microwave steakums and be excited. Honey, we're celebrating our anniversary. Beep, boop, beep, beep. Very difficult. I told this story before, but I went to an unnamed burger joint in town, and this unnamed burger joint has on their sign, best burger in town. So I went in there, and I said, can I get a burger? I want to try it. And I said, is it truly the best in town? And she said, absolutely. She brought it to me. I took one bite. She came back. She said, best burger in town, huh? I said, no, not even close. And she's like, who's better than this? And I said, Tremont? And she's like, oh, yeah, well, I mean, Tremont. That didn't fit on the sign. Best burger in town, but, Tremont, though. Paul has been ruined. And it's not that he just dabbed his toe in what he's talking about, that other life. He was the best at it. That's why he gives his resume. I lived it better than anybody else. I had more credentials than everybody else. I lived it more successfully than everybody else. I was the best of the best in that world, and I'm telling you, it's dog patoopy. This is the life. This is where life gets interesting. This is where life is meaningful. This is where purpose and intentionality and true success lives in Christ. So, my prayer through this summer is that by God's grace, He would open our eyes to what truly, really matters in this life. That we would experience a spiritual paradigm shift where we begin to see things in the proper light. That we would start to see things as they really, truly are, that we are spiritual beings, we're having a human experience, but there is something far bigger and far greater to who and what we are than just checking the boxes, the to-do lists, and the way this world defines success.